Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, A Designated Organization's Perspective on the Impact of the Startup Visa Changes, Joorney and Roseview Global Incubator. Thank you, everybody, for being here. As we always like to do, we want to know where people are joining us from. So feel free to tell us where you're located, and thank you for being here. We have 300, more than 350 people registered. So we're expecting at least 180 or 200 people joining us today, which is amazing. Okay, Montreal, Toronto, Rajiv from Brampton, Toronto, London, UK. Wow, amazing. Mississauga, Regina, Saskatchewan, Waterloo, from where Mike is. Oh, Peter Veres, welcome. Sunny Calgary. Happy to have you, Peter. Max Wang, Winnipeg. Amazing. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We're going to wait for a few minutes for people to join. We already have almost 120, so we'll be starting in a couple of minutes. Sahir from Dubai, Shanghai, China. Welcome, Yuling. Early morning in Vancouver. Thank you for joining. Iran. Phil Moni. Hi, Phil. Flattered to have you here, as always. Great. So as you know, we're going to be talking about the startup visa changes, but through the eyes of a designated entity. So we wanted to bring in a very important person within the designated organization space. So we're going to have an amazing guest that I'm going to introduce to you shortly. And we're going to be talking about, the impact on his perspective. So it's going to be very interesting. We're going to also go through some of the requirements specifically for that designated entity, which is Roseview Global Incubator. And we're going to be answering questions at the end. Okay, so on the right-hand tab, you're going to have the chat, but you also have a tab that's called questions. So if you do have additional questions, please feel free to add them there, and we're going to get to them at the end. Okay. Okay. Let's get started. Great. So hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, A Designated Organization's Perspective on the Impact of the Startup Visa Changes. My name is Marianela Mansour, Global Director of Sales and Marketing here at Joorney Business Plans, and I'll be your host today. At Joorney, it's our mission to empower international entrepreneurs and professionals in their life-changing endeavors. We specialize writing business plans for immigration purposes, including the Startup Visa program. Today, we're hosting this webinar to gain a better understanding of how the changes in the SUV impact designated entities. For this, we've partnered with Roseview, a well-known designated entity, and joining us today is Michael Dearden. Mike is a partner and co-founder of Roseview Global Incubator and a public policy expert. Following senior positions in the Canadian government as a chief of staff to 2 cabinet ministers, Mike joined Roseview Capital Consultants as a partner in 2012, and in 2019, he helped co-found BASE, which we will discuss in more detail later. In 2021, Mike was founding partner of Roseview Global Incubator, providing support for foreign entrepreneurs launching companies in Canada. Since Roseview became a designated entity under the Startup Visa program, Mike has led the application review and business due diligence team that vets all the applications to the SUV program. So who better than Mike to guide us through the recent SUV changes and the impact on designated organizations? Welcome, Mike, and thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Oh, pleasure to be with you.
Great, Mike. So as I was telling everybody, you can add your questions on the right-hand side. Everybody who has registered and attended will receive the recording at the end as soon as we're done. And please feel free to engage. We're here to know more about what Mike has to share. So let's get started with the questions. Okay. So
Great.
Mike, I like to start with the basics because a lot of people here, we have people who are already working with the startup visa, but we also have people who are joining that are starting on the startup visa. So I always like to start with the basic requirements. So what are the requirements? Who is eligible? Let's talk about the basics.
Okay, so the Startup Visa program was originally designated, and still is, by the Government of Canada to attract international entrepreneurs with innovative ideas for business to come to Canada. And that was a pretty simple premise. And so that's what they still want. They are still looking for teams of entrepreneurs who are working together to build innovative companies or to bring innovative companies to Canada. And that's the entire purpose of the Startup Visa program.
Okay. And about the purpose, what does a startup need to have in order to be eligible for this program?
So the Government of Canada says there are three criteria from their perspective in order to qualify to become an applicant. One is you have to have an innovative business proposal or business. And that's a pretty big word, innovative. So we could talk about that a little more. It doesn't just mean technology. It means maybe you do things in a new or different way. An example I often use is something like Uber. There's no great new technology to Uber. And of course, the taxi business has been around forever. But what someone did was they took technology that existed, they applied it to the taxi industry in a different way, and voila, they had an innovative company. So innovation is kind of in the eye of the beholder, and a lot of the ideas we get are innovative, and we're happy to see those. Second criteria that the Government of Canada has is that these companies must be global in scope. And what's that mean? It means that they have to be able to sell their good or their service beyond Canada. So whether it's a software or a product or whatever it is, the government says that they have to be able to sell this item, this service beyond the borders of Canada. And that's simply, I think, to eliminate things like a local restaurant or something like that. They don't want people in that business. The stream is not for those folks. The stream is for innovative people who have products that can be sold around the world. And the third thing, and the third criteria from the Government of Canada on the program, is that at some point as the company grows, it will hire Canadians. So it has to create jobs for Canadians in Canada as it grows over time. And that's pretty much expected of any company that's successful as it establishes itself. So those are the three basic government criteria in order to be an applicant to the SUV program.
Okay, great. And so usually Canada has multiple programs for business immigration. And specifically, the startup visa has an additional component, which is a designated entity. What is the purpose of the designated entity, and why did Canadian Immigration add this entity to the overall purpose of the program?
I think what happened when they originally set the program up, the government realized, we're not experts at identifying what is innovation and what's a startup company potentially successful, and obviously they want them all to be successful, look like. So they said to themselves, who's expert in that field? Who understands that field better than we do? And that's why they selected three classes of designated organizations. So they selected venture capitalists, people who invest big money in startup companies. They selected angel investors who invest money very early in startup companies. And they selected what they call business incubators. That's what we are, because we spend our time and our energy helping startup companies grow here in Canada. So they said we need to go to the experts, people who understand whether a startup company is likely to be successful or not, have them review these proposals, and then give us advice. So what we do when we review a company, for example, is we go through a due diligence process, which is fairly intensive. And at the end of it, if we believe that that company and that team meet all the criteria of the program, plus our criteria, then we will write a letter, or what's referred to formally as a commitment certificate, to the Government of Canada and say, we believe this company can be successful in Canada and that they should be part of the startup visa program and given the privileges and rights that come with that in terms of work permits and a permanent residency path. So we're meant to do the business due diligence on these applicants to, as much as possible, ensure they are going to be successful when they get here.
Great. And that's also a way to try to gain more chances of success for those companies as well, right? So that you can be able to help them with all the criteria and all the things that go into launching a startup and also growing one in North America, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what business incubators do. Most incubators focus on their local community, and that's fine. We built Roseview specifically with foreign international entrepreneurs in mind. We come from Waterloo region. We have lots of great incubators here that work with our university students and whatnot, but we wanted to target the international community, and we actually did that before we became a designated organization. So yeah, we work very closely with our clients, and if we accept them into our program, we stay and work with them right through until they get their permanent residency answer from the Government of Canada. So, you know, we all know on this call that's taking longer and longer, but we believe it's important that we as an incubator and as a supporter of our clients stay with them and help them be successful right until the end of the process.
Yeah. And there are going to be, or there are a lot of conversations around what's happening with the changes, what's happening with requirements of additional due diligence, and also tracking progress after the letter of support and before the PR, right? So we're going to be talking about that a little bit further when we talk about the startup visa changes and rumors to be changes, right?
Right.
Michael, and before we go into that, we've had different designated organizations here on our webinars, and each of them has a different program, and they are very different. What are the overall requirements of startups from the standpoint of Roseview? Can we get to know a little bit about that regarding whether if they need to be established in Waterloo or not? If you take companies at their ideation stage, or if they need to have been like pre-revenue abroad, and if it's only technology.
Right. Okay. So let's go through our list, and I'll say what we look for and what we don't look for. So beyond those three basic requirements, of course, that the Government of Canada has, we say to the people that the business idea or proposal at the heart of their business plan must originate with the applicants. So this applicants must be the owners and creators of the business idea. They can work with people to help them better organize it and present it to us, but they have to be the originators of the idea. Number two is that the founders of the company, and those of us who've been involved know that you can have up to a total of 5 partners apply under a single company. They must all, or between them, have the ability, the experience, the skills, the resources, and the attitude that we see are necessary in order to be successful as a startup company. It takes a lot of skills to be a successful entrepreneur, especially in a country you've never been in or never worked in. Definitely. And so we're looking for some of those soft skills that go along with experience, education, and resources. So that's an important quality for us to look at. You asked about a product. We require that our applicants and our clients have a minimal viable product or a prototype of it that they can demonstrate to us. So it doesn't have to be completely functioning, but it has to be developed enough that they can show it to us and we can understand that how it's innovative and what it's going to look like as it gets into the market. Now, we do not require that our applicants be in revenue. It's great if they are, that's terrific, but it's not a requirement. We do not require our clients to live in the Waterloo region. They can live wherever they wish in Canada. All of our programs are delivered online. That was the result of COVID. And many people are very comfortable with online now. If and when they come to Canada and they wish to meet with us in person and do some in-person work, that's quite possible as well. We have the facilities and we do that in Waterloo region. No requirement, however, for them to live in Waterloo, and we have clients right across the world and right across Canada. So that's another one. Another one that we often get asked about is, do you take equity or an ownership share in the companies that you help? And we do not. My partners and I are all entrepreneurs. We all own our own companies separate and apart from Roseview. And we all believe very strongly that the owners of companies should keep as much ownership as they can for as long as possible before they maybe need to sell a little bit off to get some additional financing. So we do not take any ownership stake in any of our clients. We simply ask them to pay us fees like you would if you were going to university as you take our program. Okay. So those are the critical sort of different things that we do and we look for in people when they come into our program.
And that being said, Mike, are there only ideas within technology, or have you taken ideas that are innovation as a whole, but not necessarily technology?
Yeah, absolutely. We are open to, I tell our clients, absolutely anything that is innovative, with the possible exception of cryptocurrency.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. So we have companies that are in retail, food production. We have lots of software companies, but we have companies that produce hard products, that produce windows, that do all sorts of different things. So absolutely, we are not limited in any kind of sector or technology. The key is innovation.
Okay, excellent. And Mike, can you explain a little bit about what an MVP is, the minimum viable product, and maybe a few examples? Mm-hmm.
Sure. So a minimum viable product for someone who say is in the technology business and it's a hardware business, and say they have an innovative lamp that does multiple things beyond cast light. Perhaps it can be a communications device as well. So we're going to want to see what that would look like. Have you got one built? Show us how it works. Yes, it turns on, but yes, it also can be a communication device. And yes, it can also do this and that. It can maybe run your smart home. So that's one example of it. Software is another one. We get a lot of people with software products, and we want to be able to see at least what's called a wireframe, which is an outline of the software, what it would look like, a dashboard, if someone was to go to their site and go into it. So we want to see that it's organized, that it has features, that even if it's not fully operational, we want to see that it's actually been worked on and developed. And even if it is fully developed, quite frankly, when they come to Canada and get introduced to our market, it's probably going to have to be changed a little bit to adapt to the market that's here and say in the United States. So it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be finished, but it has to be more than an idea that someone has in the back of their head, but they haven't really made into anything yet.
Okay, wonderful. And that's great to know because, all the things that you're mentioning, the fact that people don't have to necessarily establish in Waterloo, I think that also opens up a lot of different opportunities for people who are wanting to launch their startup in Canada. So thank you for that, Mike. So now let's talk about the program specifically for the startup visa, two of which are BASE and RISE. Can you explain a little bit about what these programs entail?
Sure. So those two programs are really the heart of what we do for our clients. All of our clients, when they come to us, they go through a due diligence process, and subject to how organized they are and if they can provide us the materials we require, we're able to make a decision in about a month on whether or not we will issue them a letter of support. We issue them that letter of support before they start our program. All right. So they get that right up front. If we've said yes to them, we give them a letter. Then they enter into our program. And the first part of it is base. And consists of two parts. The first part is the general introduction to Canada. So we've partnered with great firms like KPMG and TD Bank and Cushman Wakefield and other business leaders to just tell people generally who have never done business in Canada what it's like to work here. What are the rules? What are the laws? There's employment laws. There's all sorts of licensing. What's the banking structure like? So we talk about that for people. That takes 2 to 3 weeks of sessions with our clients, and they go through that. The next set of sessions under the base program is what we call workshops. We have 5 workshops which start to focus specifically on their proposal and their company. So I lead one, for example, on business plans, where we sit down and we start to go through their business plan at a high level. And I talk to them about those areas of their plan that are absolutely critical, that they need to really start working on right away. And maybe are going to have to be adjusted a little bit as they understand the realities of this new market that they're coming into. So that's the base program. That second phase of it takes maybe a week or 2. So then the third phase, which is under what we call our RISE portion, is the actual incubation. And that's anyone who's ever been to an incubator or been involved in business incubation would recognize it. It's about 4 months. It's very intensive. And we have an assigned senior mentor to each one of our clients. Our mentors are all very experienced business people. Many of them have either started their own companies or have worked with many startups over the years, hundreds of startups. And they walk through absolutely every element of a company's business with them and discuss it in great detail, help them do the research, do the planning, do the outreach, talk to markets, branding, communication, absolutely everything you need to do to make a business ready to launch. And then the fourth and final phase of our program, which we call acceleration, is when people actually launch their companies. And normally this aligns with them having arrived in Canada. So if we back up, when we give someone a letter of support, as you know, they can apply for 2 things. They can apply for their permanent residency, and they can also apply for a work permit. And we encourage our clients to apply for a work permit very early in the process. And once they get it, we encourage them to come to Canada. Why? Because IRCC tells us they want to see these people come to Canada and start the business. They want to see that they are committed to doing what the startup visa plan envisioned them would do, is just start companies. So we encourage our people to come to Canada. And in the fourth and final phase, this acceleration phase of our program, we work with them, we stay with them, we provide them advice, we make introductions, we can bring in expertise as they require it, right through until the government makes a decision on their permanent residency application. And as you know, that's taking over 3 years now. So we have a very long-term commitment with our clients, and they do with us. And so it lasts the entire span of the time they're in the startup visa program.
That's a very long commitment. But when I listen to everything that Roseview is doing for the companies, it feels like not only the startups for startup visa should have this, but rather anybody who's coming to Canada, right? So they're very lucky to have that support.
It's interesting. We have a number of companies who come to us who don't get their startup, they don't get their letter from us. They get their letter from angel groups, or they don't even get a letter, but they want to go through an incubator. We've even had people go to other incubators who come to us and say, we want to do your incubator, even though another guy gave the letter. So, I guess maybe, I don't know whether we're friendly or whatever, but anyway, we work very, very hard with our clients to make them a success, because that's our goal, is to make these people successful.
Great, Mike. And let's talk a little bit about the cost, because it's definitely a very long-term commitment on both sides. And the costs are very important for applicants as well.
Yeah, sure. So, when we started into this program, we sort of wondered about costs and whatnot and looked at some other people and so on. And we came up with a schedule where we require our clients to pay us as they go through each phase of our program. And it gets a little complicated, but we have a chart that's on our website, which breaks it all down by portion of the program, by phase of it, by number of people on the team. So, for example, if there are 2 people on a team, on a proposal, and we accept them into our program, the total cost to those 2 people is $39,000 to take our program. And that takes them from day 1, letter of support, all the way through until the final decision on their PR. Okay. And so that's one example. So they're each paying about $19,500. If there's a team of 4, they would each pay around $15,200. So we dropped the price a little bit for larger teams because really our effort is focused on the company, and whether there's 2 people or 3 people in the room, it's about working with the company. So it's a little cheaper for groups that are larger. And most of our teams are 3 to 4. And we find that's a really optimum number to bring all the skill sets required to the program.
Okay. Perfect. So I just sent the link on the chat for the website of Roseview, and specifically the part about the fee, so that you can check depending on the size of the team to see what that those fees would look like. Mike, and like I was saying before, we've had different designated entities on our webinars. All of them have different programs, different lengths, different fees, also a little bit of different values. So I wanted to ask you, what makes Roseview unique compared to other designated entities?
I think from what we know, and we talk to other designated or entities and other incubators, we're one of the very few that stay with our clients all the way through the entire process. So we do it for a couple of reasons. One, we want them to be successful. We want to give them the support they need right through until they get PR. And frankly, if they want to keep talking to us after they get their permanent residency because they like our business advice, we would be delighted to do that as well. But there's a second reason. And the second reason is, and this is becoming more and more common, IRCC wants to check on what these companies are doing. So if they've left incubation after 6 months and whoever they incubated with doesn't follow them or stay in touch with them, then in a year and a half's time, when IRCC calls us, we're not going to know what they're up to. So we have a regular program that we stay connected with our clients so that we can report to IRCC that yes, they are moving forward. They are busy building their company. They are doing what they're supposed to be doing under the terms of the program. It also helps us working with them. It keeps them up to date. We ask them to do maybe a quarterly report to us, something short and simple, but enough so that they have documentation that they can share with IRCC if they get a call. So as IRCC has started to stiffen the rules around which companies go through and which ones get approved, having this kind of information available and ready and timely is really important.
Definitely, Mike. Thank you for that. And that brings me to like my other comment about the letter of support. A lot of people, applicants, immigration lawyers, consultants, maybe sometimes they may seem that it may seem as if the letter of support is the ultimate goal, but it's only the beginning, right? It's only the starting point. And because of what you're saying about the tracking, making sure that activities are being logged and progress is being made before PR, definitely there needs to be something beyond the first 6 months after getting the letter of support, and more so because it's now taking almost 3 years.
Absolutely.
And that being said, I mean, this is a great transition to now start talking about some of the changes that the government is doing on the program. So I would love to know from you, Mike, what are those changes and also changes to be that have come up in the program?
Okay, so we're talking with a bunch of immigration professionals here. So I want to make very clear that Roseview does no immigration work. We do not have an immigration professional on our staff. We encourage all of our clients to work with an immigration professional. Now, so that people listening understand, over 90% of the people that come to us do not have an immigration consultant. They find us on the Government of Canada website and they apply directly. We tell those people, in our experience, it would be very beneficial for you to work with a professional immigration lawyer or consultant. And we found that to be absolutely true. Much in the same way as we often have to say to people, you need someone to help you organize your business ideas, to put it in a format where we can easily review it, whether that's a business plan or a pitch deck, put together some financial information and CVs. All these materials are very helpful for us when we review companies. And if applicants don't have any of this and they don't have the advice of an immigration consultant, that can be very difficult for us to be able to process them and bring them into our program. So that's something that we do. Now, in terms of the changes that have been talked about, there were some changes made back in May that are sort of on the immigration side of things and have gone forward around work permits and other things. What really has been sort of a topic of conversation in the industry is the announcements that the former Minister of Immigration, Mr. Fraser, made when he was at a conference in Toronto in June. And at that conference, he talked about 4 or 5 different business immigration programs in Canada. And I'm only going to talk about the SUV because that's what we specialize in. He talked about changing the terms for work permits. He talked about changing some of the priority, and he talked about adding some additional designated organization to the list of designated organizations that already exist. Now, what people need to understand is that he said that this is something the government is considering. These are proposals. They are not law. They're not in effect. And then, of course, what happened was that Minister Fraser was moved in a cabinet shuffle, and a new minister has come in. And at the very beginning of this seminar, you mentioned I happen to have a little experience in government. And having been inside government, worked for ministers, I know that what happens is when you switch ministers, everything gets put on hold.
Yes.
Everything gets held until the new minister gets up to speed and then makes the decision, am I going to go forward with those previous thoughts and proposals, or are we going to go in a different direction? So to date, we have seen nothing from IRCC that makes what he talked about in June into new requirements, laws, and regulations. So, this notion of prioritizing applicants for consideration based on how much funding they have from venture capitalists, angels, or incubators has been talked about, but it isn't done. It's like the 3-year work permit and changing it to an open work permit, which many, many people are very supportive of. So there's some confusion in the industry about what's going on and what's happened. And I'm sure that, many of the viewers and listeners here know that IRCC sometimes moves in mysterious ways, and we don't always know either. We as a designated organization have an individual, an officer assigned to us within IRCC who helps us and works with us and answers our questions. And frankly, sometimes they don't have all the answers to some of the questions we ask about things like this. But what is obvious, and I'm going on a long time here, I'm sorry. What is obvious is government is tweaking the rules around the program in order to get applicants who more closely aligned with what they originally intended. So we're seeing IRC is asking us questions about, do they really have the money? Do they really, in their plan, talk about how employing Canadians? So now there are requirements for things like staffing reports. So there's a greater need than ever before for people who are wishing to become involved in this program to develop good business plans, good documentation that they can submit to us. We can work with them and help them improve it and Canadianize it, if you will, for the marketplace here. And then they in turn are going to have to submit that to the federal government and to demonstrate that they are committed to this program, that they meet the criteria, and they should be considered for permanent residency in Canada. So that's what we're starting to see is the government tightening up on the rules because, frankly, there were some people that kind of went through the system that maybe were not exactly what the government had intended when they originally established this program.
Mike, and you mentioned that you checked today the list of designated entities to see if there was any change regarding Canada Tech Network organizations in that list. Did you see anything different?
No, they have not been added to the list as a group. So there is no change. I mean, there are changes to designated organizations because people apply, and from time to time they add a new designated entity to the list. But no, the Canada Tech Network as a group has not been added to the list of designated organizations by IRCC.
Okay, some of them were originally, but they had always been there. Okay.
Yeah, some of them had always been there. Some of them were there previously and had dropped off.
Okay.
We have found that there were a number of incubators and VCs and angel investors who originally joined the program, but found that this isn't quite right for us. It's not a good fit, or the clients that are coming in don't meet our criteria. So a number of them have stopped, and I'm sure many of the listeners and viewers today know that from their own experience, that many of the organizations that are shown as designated organizations on the IRCC website, in fact, have nothing at all to do with the startup visa program. They've just never taken their name off the list.
Yes, definitely. And we see it ourselves because when we started doing the business plans for the startup visa, we decided to reach out to many of them. And the reason why we started the webinars was because we couldn't. So what we did was insist, follow up, and connect with the ones that were available so that we can share information about what they were looking for. But it was definitely a big challenge. Mike, so you mentioned the announcements that were made in June by the previous minister, and you have conversations with IRCC. So is Roseview making any changes to their processes, to their requirements in order to align to those, even though they are not official yet?
Yeah, I suppose, and I guess maybe from day one, because of our experience in the startup world, one of my favorite lines to our clients is that starting a business takes twice as long and costs twice as much as you think it will. So we have always put a real emphasis on making sure that our clients have sufficient financial resources to pay for their immigration consultant, pay for their business advisors, pay for their settlement fees, and pay our fees, as well as pay for the costs of starting their company. And subject to the type of company, if it's a manufacturing company, well, obviously it's going to cost a lot of money to start because they have to have a plant and equipment and so on. If it's a software company and they already have the software, well, a lot less to start the company. But they have to have sufficient finances to be able to successfully enter the program and have a chance of success at the end of it with their business. So that's something that we've always sort of thought about and considered as part of our criteria, but more and more that is becoming important. Now, we're also seeing, as a result of some changes, is the government is asking for more specific information about things like, and I mentioned this earlier, staffing plans. They want to see a staffing plan when someone applies for a work permit to work for their own company. So this is, again, the government going back to the original criteria for the program and saying, how do we tighten that up a little bit? How do we better prove and have these people demonstrate that, in fact, they do meet this criteria? Well, let's ask them for a staffing plan. So they can't just say, yeah, I'm going to hire 4 Canadians. No. We want to see it. We want to see what it's like in year 1 and year 2 and year 3. What are these people going to be doing? What might you pay them? So this is the kind of detailed information that the government is now requesting, that we as an incubator have to be able to work with our clients to make sure they have available so they can be successful in the program.
Great. And Mike, in line with the same changes, do you foresee that these are going to be benefiting or challenging the startup ecosystem within Canada in terms of fostering innovation and job creation?
Yeah, I think it'll be greatly successful, helpful. The more we can do as an industry to support these people to be successful, the more it's going to benefit Canada. And that was always our goal when we went into this business, even before we were designated. We wanted to help international entrepreneurs come to Canada and be successful. And, you know, we realized what a big chore that was. It's a huge chore, even for established companies who are operating and successful in their home jurisdiction to pick up and move to a new market. It's very challenging. So that was always our intent. Our intent was always to help these people. And we believe by the government requiring everyone to explain things more fully, to have better business plans, to have better pitch decks, to have strong financials, that's going to do nothing but help them and help Canada with more successful companies.
Great. Mike, so we see a lot of like involvement in the government trying to fine tune the requirements in order to, like you say, come back to the original purpose of the program. But something I wanted to ask is, do you consider there to be a lack of trust from the government towards some designated entities, and how could they address that?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think one way to measure that is there's a program of peer review where, and some of your people may not know this, is that when a designated organization submits a certificate or basically their recommendation that a company be accepted into the program, at some point officials in IRCC review it. And if an official at IRCC reviews the application and the information we send to them and says, boy, you know, I'm not so sure about that business. I mean, I'm not an expert in it, but it doesn't seem to be really innovative or likely to be successful. They go out and they ask people in our industry to do a peer review or to review the application submitted by other designated organizations and give their professional opinion as to whether or not, in fact, it should have been and it did meet the criteria. So there is a process that the government has in place of checking on all of its designated organizations to make sure that they are applying the criteria appropriately. Now, if you as an organization continue to get these peer reviews, I think it starts to send a pretty strong message to the government that you're not applying the criteria properly. What are you doing? How can you put through hundreds of companies that don't meet the criteria? So something is wrong, and there's no doubt. When I had a brief conversation with the previous Minister of Immigration, Minister Fraser, he said to me, we are very much looking for feedback from our designated organizations because there are some that we fear are simply abusing the program and not following the rules or applying the criteria properly, and we need to understand how to fix that. So I would not be surprised, given that there are 15,000 people in the backlog for consideration under this program, that a number of them, unfortunately, are going to get no's because they did not start out and go through a process properly at the front that really helped them meet the criteria of the program.
Exactly. And do you think eventually maybe the number of peer reviews can also impact whether a designated entity can stay on the list or not?
I mean, I would hope so. I would hope it's, you know, you get so many traffic tickets, eventually they take away your license. So at some point, you know, and I'll be frank, we've recommended that to the federal government. We said that if you want to improve the quality of the program, then those people who refuse to follow the rules should be removed from the program. And, you know, we're happy. We've never had a peer review, knock on wood. And, you know, we're very happy that the government has tests and standards, and they should be applied, because it's not to anybody's favor or advantage to have a system like this that doesn't work. It reflects badly on all of us if there is a system that is being abused by people.
Okay. Definitely. And Mike, you were saying that internally Roseview has made some changes, making sure that the tracking after the incubation process is there. What other changes have you done, and what other communications have you had with IRCC, like maybe asking for additional due diligence for certain applicants or things like that? Have you encountered any of that?
We had an interesting exchange with IRCC not long ago. where they asked us about the tracking method that we use for our clients after they finish the sort of first three phases, the more formal phases of incubation. And we took from that, and they sent that out generally to designated organization incubators. And they sort of were saying, they were trying to understand, how is it that we track people? Because we believe that they themselves are trying to figure out how to better track, monitor, and ensure people are committed to the program and are moving forward with the development and launch of their business. And it's very hard for IRCC to track all these different people. So they're asking us as designated organizations to do that for them. So we see that as another step in the process of the government tightening up to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing under the program.
Exactly. Great, Mike. So lastly, before we go into the Q&A and to talk a little bit about Joorney as well, I wanted to ask what key message or information would you like to share with immigration professionals and also people who want to apply for the startup visa regarding the changes and just the program as a whole? What would be like your message?
Thanks. I mean, I guess the message is that, we're very serious about helping serious startup companies be successful in Canada. And we are open to helping any kind of innovative startup company be successful. We have the expertise and the experience with our staff and our mentors and our supporters to be able to do that for you. We also intend to work with clients all the way through until they get their PR decision. So even if that takes 3-4 years, we're going to be there and supportive of them. So that's important. So if you, as an immigration expert, have someone who is an entrepreneur, who has experience, who has had some success, and a bit of failure doesn't hurt in entrepreneurs, it teaches us lessons, has the capability, has the team, the experience, skills, and resources in forms of money to be able to come to Canada and with our help, launch and run a successful business, then we're very interested in talking to you. That's who we want to hear from, because our goal is to create 100 successful new companies in Canada. That's our goal as a business. So we're going to work really hard with our clients. We're going to be careful about who we pick. And if you have people who are serious about being part of the startup visa program, we would love to help them be successful and help you be successful along the way.
Thank you for that, Mike. So I want to ask the team to share the information, Mike's email, the way to reach out to Roseview, also the website, so that we can share it on the chat if we haven't already. And then I'm going to quickly share a PDF. Let me check. Let me see. Let me ask the team if we have that now. Let me check if this is the one. Okay, we do. So I just wanted to briefly recap. Most people who are here on the webinar know us from before, but for those who don't know us, we specialize doing business plans for immigration purposes, and the Startup Visa is one of the programs that we do those business plans for. Specifically for the Startup Visa, what we have tried to do in the past is customize the packages for the designated organizations. So some designated organizations require a 2-page business plan, maybe a pitch deck, a full format business plan, sometimes populated Excel financials. So what we've done to make it easier for applicants and immigration professionals is determine packages for each. So specifically for Roseview, we have our full format business plan, we have a pitch deck, and we have a package for those two. And also we have the option of a financial model as well, depending on what stage that company is at. So we have 2 options of packages. The first one includes the full format business plan and the pitch deck, and it has a special price when you buy those together. And then for option 2, we have the full format business plan, the pitch deck, and also the financial model, and that's the pricing for that as well. And additional to that, as many of you know, we do business plans for all Canadian business immigration programs that require one. So feel free to reach out to us. and our information is also going to be on the chat. Okay. So now let's get ready for our Q&A. Let me close this up. Okay. And let me open up some questions. We have a few of them. Let me see. Okay, so we have a question from Phil Mooney. In your experience, Mike, what is the commercial success rate of serious innovators? We have heard 5 to 10%.
Yeah, you know what? That's right. A lot of people who are angel investors in the startup world, and I've spent a lot of time there, will tell you that if they can get 1 or 2 out of 10 companies to be successful, that's a good success rate. So yeah, you're right, Phil. That's about the success rate. Now, to keep in mind, if that makes you think, oh boy, this is bad because it's not going to work in the SUV. The SUV program does not require the applicants to be business successful. It requires them to try and to work hard and to put their best efforts into it. So there's no criteria in the program that says, well, unless you're making $1 million a year or having grown your office to 30 people, you're not going to get in. That's not the case. It's about attracting a type of person who has demonstrated the ability and the interest to work hard to create businesses. That's what it's about.
And that it doesn't stop there, right, Mike? Because if that talent comes into Canada, maybe that particular business they applied with may fail. Hopefully it doesn't. But if it does, then the idea is that they would keep on launching new businesses that are innovative and technology like involved. Yeah, right.
Absolutely. I mean, we get people who are brilliant. Some who are creative inventor types and not strong on the business side. And we just know that if we give them a little business support, they could probably be successful. But even if they aren't, with all their brains and creative energy, they'll be producing all sorts of products that they can work with other Canadians to make a success of.
Great. We have another question, Ahmad Kenan. Do you accept candidates who are not entrepreneurs in their home country, but have relevant employment experience in their field, for example, dentists, doctors, engineers?
We do. Generally, we are a little concerned about people who have not worked in the private sector. So, I mean, if we have lots of people who have management experience in the private sector, if you are a public sector employee, frankly, we're a little tougher on you about whether or not you have that kind of experience that comes with having been in the private sector and having to meet payroll and generate sales and make profits and be part of a team like that. So the answer is yes, we do take people who are not entrepreneurs but have experience. So that's why our typical client is someone who is in their 30s or 40s and have had some experience either as their own business or in business before they decide they want to try to come to Canada.
Thank you, Mike. Another question from Yang Zhang. Is there a particular quota for each designated entity to issue a letter of support, like 5,000 each year? And is there a quota for IRCC to approve the SUV PR applications each year? And are they first come, first serve?
Boy, lots of questions. So there are no limits on a designated organization to write letters of support. Now, as an incubator, we cannot write thousands of letters of support. We simply don't have the capacity to work with and help thousands of businesses be successful. So, that limits us probably more than anything. And the other designated organizations are limited by the amount of money they have to invest. So nobody is going to write thousands. But there is no formal limit, to answer your question. In terms of the numbers, the Government of Canada has announced that they intend to increase the numbers of applicants allowed under the program to 3,500 and then 5,000. So the number of allowable applicants is growing. And so that's a good thing for the program. So even though the government seems to be wanting to tighten it up a little bit and find the right people, they still want more of them to come. Now, I know there was a third question in there, and I think I've forgotten it. I'm sorry.
Are they first come, first serve?
I'm sorry, in terms of approval by IRCC or in terms of acceptance?
Approval
I don't know.
for the PR.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It seems some move faster through the process than others,
Mhm.
but I don't. I think it's first come, first served. Although again, the government has said, the former minister said in his comments that one of the things they were thinking about was giving priority to companies that were better financed or came through certain incubators.
Okay.
Okay, now they haven't acted on that yet, but they have said that that's something that they were thinking of doing.
Okay. And Roseview is already preparing for that.
Yeah, we're already prepared. We ensure that our clients have sufficient finances to launch and run the business, or they don't get into our program.
Great. Amir Hossein has a question. Can an investor be a member of the team?
Sure. An investor, if the team requires capital, under the program, each partner on the application must own a minimum of 10% of the company. So if one individual is the investor and is the money person, they could own 50% and their partners could share the other 50% between them. That's fine. That's quite agreeable, allowable, as long as everyone has 10%. We would like our investors, and most of them do, to have other business experience that they could bring to the table. So perhaps they're a financial person, or they've been the senior manager of a company, or they've owned a company, and that's why they've gotten the money they have to invest. So they have other soft skills that they could bring to augment the team. But the short answer to your question is yes, we have investors who are parts of teams.
We have a question from Prasan Linaj. How often does the IRCC review progress? Like, what are they expecting regarding the tracking of the progress?
I think they're still in the process of figuring that out. I think they're still in the process of setting up a system that will allow them to do that. Frankly, I think the numbers in the program got away from them a little bit, and far more people applied and far more letters were received than they had anticipated. And then they had to deal with COVID, and they've had a number of other emergencies in other areas of the immigration department. So that's taken resources away. So only now are they starting to try and get a handle on this process. So I don't think they're there yet. We try to meet with our clients or propose to meet with our clients once they're finished the first 3 phases and they're in the final phase of our program. We try to meet with them every 3 months and we do a report on them so that we're prepared. No matter when IRCC contacts us or them, we're always ready to give something pretty much up to date.
And this is a question from me, but do you use any technology for that, or it's more paperwork of saving the information that you have in those meetings?
Well, we use all sorts of tracking information, some of which we're sort of developing ourselves to try and keep track of where our clients are. We're finding it's actually becoming quite a job creator. It's just building the team to be able to serve and track our clients.
Great. I have another question. I have a question from Tiana. If Roseview issues the letter of support right at the beginning, the applicant can start the PR right away while going through the base and rise stages. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Adam Bloom asks, what is the expected investment in addition to the fees? What would be in addition to the fees?
Yeah, this is hard. And I talked earlier about, different companies require different amounts of money. And it's really subject to the business plan. The business plan, whether it comes with the help of Joorney or otherwise, will lay out what it's going to cost to finance this company through its early stage and launch. And then it will project revenues and expenses and so on. So, some companies may require $500,000 to launch. Some require a lot less. If they're already along the road to being a company in terms of they've got a prototype, they've got an MVP, or they were even selling their product or service already in their home country, then of course it costs less. I'm not avoiding answering the question. I'm trying to explain why it is so hard to set a price on what it would cost for a company. So having said all that, I'm going to say we use as a very rough rule of thumb, each applicant should have $50,000 in addition to covering all the other costs they have that they can use to invest in the company over time. So they don't have to put up that $50,000 day one. They may start to slowly finance and build the company over a year or two or three. But we generally like to see about $50,000 per applicant on a team to be able to put towards the launch of the company.
Okay. And yes, it has to make sense with the business, right? Because if it's another type of venture, then it would have to be way more.
Right. Exactly.
We have a question from Phil Mooney. Is there an assessment fee before accepting a client, before the letter of support?
Absolutely not. They charge absolutely no fees for reviewing, doing due diligence. We are open to looking at ideas so that you don't have to go maybe through the whole process of something. If someone wants to call and say, hey, does this make any sense at all in the program? We're happy to give a quick response, and then we'll tell them, now you've got to go away and do the paperwork. But we believe what you have told us in its infancy of an idea is, in fact, good for the program. No charge. As a matter of fact, under the rules of IRCC, designated organizations are not allowed to charge to issue a letter of support.
So it's 12 now, but we're going to stay for a few minutes because we have more questions. If it's okay with you, Mike, we're going to stay and answer a few more questions. We're probably going to stay around 10 more minutes. I just wanted to remind everybody that this webinar is CPD credited. So you will receive 1 CPD credit for attending the webinar. Okay. Let's go ahead with the questions. And thank you. I mean, if people are leaving and are going to receive the recording, thank you very much for being here. We're going to stay for a little bit. Let me see. I have another question from Prasan Lanaj. Does the whole group have to stay together until the process is completed? What if one more drops out for some reason?
Yeah, that is tricky. That's the problem. IRCC does not like that. So yes, when you put, when we put to the people that they have to stay together as a team and work as a team, you better be pretty sure that you've got the right mix of folks and you get along. It's a bit like a marriage building a business, right? It'd be pretty stressful. So we really want to make sure that people understand what they're getting into with this program. So yeah, if people start dropping off, IRCC says, well, I'm sorry. The application was submitted for 4 people, and you said it would be successful because of these 4 people. Now 2 of them have left, so how can it be successful? So,
starts getting tricky. And we discussed that in our previous webinar as well with Zainab Sae, if you want to check some details about that as well. And of course, some immigration professionals can help in that regard, but it definitely gets challenging. I have a question from Topil Vargas. I am already on a startup visa program. Can I start a second business? If so, if the original startup visa program fails despite best efforts due to business circumstances, do I have to wind up my second business?
No, absolutely not. Good for you. Start a second business. What they want is successful entrepreneurs. And they want the companies to be innovative. So you can't start an innovative company and then decide you want to buy a convenience store as a second business. That's not going to fly. But if it's an innovative company that you're doing, that's what matters. So good for you.
We have a question from Mohammed Shakil. We discussed this briefly, but it's good that we go back. So it has to do with the announcements during Collision. So PR applications with letter of support from designated organizations who are members of Canada Tech Network are fast-tracked. What is Canada Tech Network?
Well, Canada Tech Network is a group of incubators from across Canada. I think there are 28 members of it. Many of them are already designated organizations. Most of them are associated with leading Canadian universities, and they were originally put together for a completely different purpose, to coordinate efforts in Canada on developing digital technology. So this organization has been in place a long time, and it receives some funding from the federal government. So I think when the Ministry of Immigration was looking around and trying to find another potential pool of designated organizations that could have review applications, they said, here's this organization, it's based in Waterloo, that we already know, and we already give them some money. Maybe they would like to become designated organizations under the Startup Visa Program. It has not happened. They have not been named designated organizations. As we said earlier, there are some members of that organization who happen to be designated organizations, but the organization itself has not yet, writ large, been designated by IRCC to process SUV letters of support.
Thank you, Mike. We have a question from Adel Alfeki. What does IRCC request to see in the progress of the startups? And what support could we get as a service from a designated entity like Roseview after the letter of support? I mean, what are the KPIs to indicate that I am good in front of IRCC?
Well, I think what you want to be able to demonstrate is that you are moving forward with the implementation of your business plan. So does that mean you're doing market research? Does that mean you are tweaking your product or service? Does that mean that you're out talking to customers? Have you hired someone that you need to help you grow your business? So anything that demonstrates progress, because remember, the government will have copies of your business plan and other documentation that you have provided over time, and they'll look at it and say, so Mike, a year into your business plan, you were supposed to be doing this. Are you doing that? Or what are you doing? And I can say, well, we tried and that wasn't successful, or we haven't got there yet, or yes, we have. So it's basically a report card on what you're doing and how are you going about implementing what you said you would implement in your business plan.
Yes. That's really important, not only for the Startup Visa progress and the tracking, but also for business immigration, business plans in general. We encourage our applicants and our clients to always be conservative, realistic, but make sure that those are things that are achievable, so that it makes sense also whether if the program has a renewal phase or something like that. And then also, again, Mike, you were mentioning about staffing. So the personnel plan is something that we always include in the business plan. We have a question. I have a question from Andre Moura. PR applications through SUV are already able to request an open work permit. Do you know of any case that already received such a permit?
I do not. None of our clients have received an open work permit under this program.
Okay. Ahmad Kanan asks, if the Startup Visa applicants are planning to start their business once they obtain PR and don't apply for a work permit, does IRCC still request progress updates from the designated organization and applicants?
I'm going to say to you that you'll never get to that point because you will be rejected. IRCC will look at the file and say, they've not applied for a work permit for 2.5 years. They've not come to Canada. They've not started the business. These people do not belong in the Startup Visa program. What they're looking for is people who are anxious to come to Canada and start or locate their business here. They're not looking for someone who wants to stay at home, keep doing what they're doing, and wait 3 years to get their PR and then come over and maybe start. So you're not going to get a request for a progress report. You're going to get a no.
Okay. Mike, and what about if they are abroad but are doing progress in their startup? Would that apply?
Yeah, no, that can apply. I mean, we encourage people to get a work permit and they can come. Now, we understand people go back and forth, and that's fine. I mean, this is a big adjustment in life. It takes a while sometimes to relocate a family and to wrap up your life in one place and go to another. Plus, also, many of our applicants have business interests in their home country, and it's to their advantage to continue to stay in touch with those business interests while they grow in Canada, because go back to one of the original purposes of the Startup Visa program, it was to build Canadian companies that were global. So if I'm selling a product in China now, and I decide I want to go to Canada so I can grow it and expand the company, you still want to do business in China. And that meets exactly with the criteria of the program. So absolutely, people can go back and forth, spend some time in their home country, come here. As long as they're working on the business, that's fine.
We have a question from Mustafa Bakr. an immigration lawyer or consultant, do you have any assessment form to qualify the clients? Do you want us to connect you with a potential client profile, or do you advise us to come with all the detailed business plan and sales pitch to you from the very beginning?
Okay, well, if you go to our website and you take a look, we have an online application. And it's fairly simple. It's not a full-fledged plan. So you could start there. But really, it's much more helpful, as I mentioned at the beginning, if we get the documentation we require in order to make a decision. So that is a business plan, it's a pitch deck, it's CVs on all of the partners, it's financial information, it's all the things that people, the Joorney help you with, and immigration consultants can advise their people to provide. So if we all work together on this and put together good packages up front, it really helps us make better decisions about who are the right clients. And as I said, our experience is people that come to us that have an immigration professional advising them and business support and help are far and away the most successful people in getting into and enjoying our program.
Great. We have a little comment here from Phil saying that starting a second business may lead to a refusal under R89. So, I mean, that's like a comment regarding the second business situation. Okay.
Okay, so that's an immigration issue that, again, we do not do immigration, but I would say if you have an innovative company and you pivot a bit, which is a favorite word in the startup ecosystem, meaning you change your company a little bit and you kind of go in a different direction, I don't think that's going to hurt you at all. It's the effort from our perspective.
Exactly. If it were to be a second business, then they would need to reapply if it's completely different.
Well, they're judged on the first business. They're judged on their business. If they happen to have a successful business, that's maybe not part of the process. Okay. If they're on a closed work permit, I guess the question becomes, why are you working on another business? Because under the current program, you're required to focus only on your startup as per your application. So that may get you.
That makes sense. We have a question from Yang Zhang, but that has to do with something that we previously mentioned about the location. And Mike, maybe you want to touch on that again, whether the applicants for letter of support for Roseview, do they need to establish in Waterloo or not?
No, they do not. They can establish themselves anywhere in Canada, and we have clients right across Canada. So no, but if they'd like to, we'd love to have them here. We've got lots of resources to help startup companies. Waterloo region is the startup capital of Canada because of our universities and our friendly investors and so on. But it is not a requirement.
Wonderful. Great, Mike. I think we've covered a lot of the different topics that we aim for. So thank you so much, Mike, for being here. It has been a pleasure to have you. Obviously, the knowledge that you have is great, and I'm happy that Joorney was able to share that with everybody who's here and everybody who's going to watch it after receiving the recording. So closing remarks, Mike?
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share some information and let people know that we're certainly very open and interested in hearing from them and their clients. We're delighted that people work with professional immigration consultants and good business advisors. It's very helpful to the process. It's very helpful to their clients to be successful in getting into the program and being successful when they are in it. So if you have serious entrepreneurs, serious business people who have the sort of characteristics and qualities that we talked about, we're extremely interested in hearing from them and helping them be successful in Canada.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, everybody, applicants, immigration lawyers, immigration consultants who are always with us with our different webinars. Thank you so much for supporting us. Until next time, bye.
Bye.